Hi guys, today we'll start with Raspberry Pi. Like, what is Raspberry Pi basically, and what are the uses of Raspberry Pi? Why is it being so, what's the reason why it is being so popular nowadays in the market? And what's the basic advantage of using a Raspberry Pi and so on. So we'll cover the basic things like what. So we'll start with the basic thing like what is a Raspberry Pi? So let's say Raspberry Pi is an pocket-sized computer, and as any computer, it should have these four things like the input, the memory, the processing, and the output. Okay, so for the input, the basic things that you will be needing is the keyboard. Firstly, is the keyboard and mouse. So obviously that is the input interface that lets you interact with your computer. Apart from that, you might be having USB ports, you might be having Wi-Fi, you might be having Bluetooth, and it's specialized electronics. Like for an Raspberry Pi, we will be having GPIO pins. So these are your input components. After that, for memory as in for memory, when your computer needs, your computer has RAM, ROM, your hard drive, or maybe a cloud storage as well. And in case of Raspberry Pi, you have an onboard chip, memory chip, and an SD card. So onboard memory chip is the RAM. You might be having 1, 2, 4, or 8 GB of RAM, depending upon what version of Raspberry Pi you're using. And you have your USB ports, so you can attach your USB drives through the USB ports. And apart from that, now when you go into processing, your computer has a CPU. Now for your Raspberry Pi, it has an ARM processor along with an Broadcom SoC. So SoC is nothing but system on chip. So when you take your computer for example, it has an Intel processor, and your Intel or AMD processor. So along with your processor, you'll be needing other peripherals in order to get your system or your computer working. So all those extra peripherals are when integrated into a chip is called as an SoC. So SoC is nothing but all the other peripherals or the extra peripherals that you need to get your processor running is called as an SoC. So that's your Broadcom SoC in your Raspberry Pi. Now, in your output, you have your video. When you look into your Raspberry Pi board, okay, so this is your Raspberry Pi board. So you have your HDMI port. Okay, you have your HDMI port. Below that you have your USB power pin, and above that you have your TRS port or your TRS jack, your audio jack. So you can connect in your cable, and you can connect any speaker or audio output into this Raspberry Pi. Now, apart from that, you have your GPIO pins in order to connect any sensor or like an input output actuators or something. And you have your USB ports. You have your USB ports. You have your Ethernet jack, and you have your for wireless connections. You have like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. Okay, so that basically covers what consists of in your output. Okay, now. Now, how do we start using it? So, what are the basic things that we'll be needing in order to start using it? So, initially, we'll be needing a card reader and a memory card. You will be needing a card reader and a memory card in order to boot up your Raspberry Pi. So, we'll be using the Stretch OS because the latest OS, that is the Buster, it's only supported to Raspberry Pi 4. It's not supported for Raspberry Pi 3. So we'll be using Stretch since we're using Raspberry Pi 3. And the reason that we're using Raspberry Pi 3 is because it's much more stable as compared to Raspberry Pi 4. There are some basic issues or basic some bugs that hasn't been sorted out yet in Raspberry Pi 4. So for now, we'll start with Raspberry Pi 3. Okay, so for that we will be needing the stretch OS. This is your stretch OS. So I'll just extract it. It's already extracted. I will just keep it as it is. And yeah, you need these four software or these two softwares basically to write your OS into your SD card and to boot up your Raspberry Pi. So the first part is to format your SD card. So I'll I'll just format my SD card. Make sure your SD card is inserted into your laptop. After that, open up SD card formatter. and select your memory card and format it. I won't format it now because I've already formatted it once. So I'll just close it. After that, open Galina Etcher. Now, once you open Galina Etcher, you need to select an like image file in order to flash it to your SD card. So you need to select the OS actually. So I need to extract the OS. So the OS is inside this folder. So just go over there. So you have your OS over here. So we have our SPN stretch. So I'll just select this and I'll just start flash and it will start flashing. I've already done this, so I won't do it again. After that, close it and go back to your folder. You might have to eject it and insert it back again. So I'll just eject it and insert it back. Okay, so now now let to start flashing. Just flash it. After formatting an SD card, you need to flash this image into your Raspberry Pi. So what does it set up your using Raspberry Pis and hi-fi volts to speakers? So that's cool. So this might take some time, like around 3 or 4 minutes, depending upon what class of memory card you're using. If you're using class 10, and if you're using an like good SD card reader, then this shouldn't take more than 2 or 3 minutes. So let's see what all options are there apart from that. Okay, so for Raspberry Pi, you have your News installer. Now, what is News actually? So when you go to News, you won't be installing an OS using News. News is not an OS actually. News is an OS installer. So News is an OS installer as in like when you boot up your Raspberry Pi using News, while booting up, it asks you which OS do you want to use. Okay, which OS do you want to install in your Raspberry Pi? So you select which OS, select the OS, and you continue. So you get all these options. Like if you go over to the Raspberry Pi website, you're getting all these options for the OSs actually. So you have your Ubuntu Mate, Core, Server, OSMC. OSMC is nothing but Open Source Media Center. That is something like you get your open source media center as in you can like post your songs or videos or something using this OS. And you have your library, like you have your Mozilla Web things. This is used for something used for your IoT. Pinet is used to like interconnect multiple Raspberry Pi. This OS is a non-Linux distribution as it is written. Like it is all these are Linux distributions. This is basically just developed for Raspberry Pi. That is not a Linux distribution. And then you have your weather station, you have your Raspberry Pi Jam, and along with that there are some other OSs as um, for gaming and stuff. So there's one for gaming that is called RetroPie. There's one called Recall Box, and for Pinet is obviously for interconnecting multiple Raspberry Pis. And so those things, I mean, there are many OSs that are supported by Raspberry Pi. So when you install News, you get all these options as of which OS to install. So you can select any such OS as according to your need, and you can continue. So it will download it from the internet and then install it after that. Okay. So we have almost done here. So once your memory card is flashed, once your memory card is formatted first, and then after you flash it with an OS, like we need some a few other steps. Now you might not be having a keyboard, you might not be having a mouse in order to directly get it working. You might not be having a monitor, your external tools or anything. So we can operate your Raspberry Pi over the network. So we'll see what are the steps to do that. If it's time now. All right, so that's done. You need to go back to your folder. You need to go back to the folder, and it's not here. So you need to eject. I mean, it's already ejected. So eject it once again. Insert it back. When you insert it back, you'll be getting you will be getting something called a boot. Sorry. So once you insert it back, you should be getting something called as boot. So this was implemented in the system. So so once it is formatted, it will check it. So I think there's some issue with the writing part. So, well, I'll install some other software actually in 32 disk imager, because sometimes the Balena doesn't work here properly. So I think it's better if you use Win32 disk imager. It's a small software, so it won't take much time. Alright, so let it pause. Alright, so we'll continue with the. Okay, so if you don't have an keyboard, mouse, or other such things, you will boot it over the network. Okay, so for that, we have to now We need to do one more thing also. It's to format it once again. It's already. Let's see. So we're going to do booting for now. Okay. Okay, it is booting up. So you can see over here that the Raspberry Pi is booting. So you could see two LEDs over there. So the one is the red LED and the green LED. So if the red LED, I mean, it's glowing, which means that this is powered on. Your Raspberry Pi is powered on. After that, you have your green LED. So if the green LED is glowing, which means it is reading something from the memory card. So you have your memory card over here. Okay, you can see that you have your memory card over here. So if your green LED is glowing, which means it is booting up from your memory card. And when you initially start up your Raspberry Pi, and if your green LED is not glowing or if it's not blinking, which means there is something wrong with your Raspberry Pi. Okay, so that's it. So and you shouldn't be removing, I mean, or switching off your Raspberry Pi if the green LED is glowing. So if you switch off your Raspberry Pi and the green LED is glowing, which means it might corrupt your entire Raspberry Pi. So better not do that. Okay, just we should make sure that you are not doing that. Okay, that's it. That's it. Let's just this inserted that. Now I think it is properly booted now. So now you could see that it has created these things. So we need two more things actually. We need to make sure that it is connecting to your local node. So we'll create a folder called SSH and the .text part, txt. Okay, the .text part shouldn't be there. Okay, the .txt part shouldn't be there. So you need to enable file extensions over here. You need to enable this file extensions over here. So make sure this is enabled or else you won't see the .text part. Okay, make sure this is enabled. After that, when you're creating this file called SSH, remove the txt part. Okay, remove the txt part. After that, again create one more file called WPA underscore supplicant. Okay, WPA underscore supplicant dot cons. Okay, you need to add some a few things over here. So I already have that file over here. I'll just copy and paste it over some extra actually. So I've already given it in this folder called IoT using Raspberry Pi. So you can open this and edit it with this. Copy this part. Copy this part. Paste it over here. And instead of network name, give it your network name. Like my network name is NARE, so I'll give it as NARE, and my password is um, um, so this is my password. Obviously, I know that it is a bit tough. Okay, so that's it. So you need to create this file called WK supplicant and this SSH file. So you need to create these two files, SSH and WK supplicant.conf. After that, you need to eject this, eject it, insert it back to your Raspberry Pi. Okay, insert it back to your Raspberry Pi and power it on. Okay, and power it on. All right, and power it back on. All right, so it is powered back on. Now it is booting. Okay, so let it boot up. Once it is booted up, you need to check your network. So for that, there is something called as advanced IP scanner. So open it and okay, click on IPs just so that you could collect all your IPs actually. So and start your scan. Okay, so you should be getting your Raspberry Pi's IP address over here. And there's one more thing actually. This is my router's IP address 198.0.1. Obviously, that is my router's IP address. This is my desktop's IP address. After that, now this is my Raspberry Pi's IP address. So I got my Raspberry Pi's IP address. That's my phone's IP address. Okay, what is this? Okay. Yes. So 919.192.168.0.102. Now we need something called as Mobo Extra. I'll provide a link to all the softwares. So go to sessions, go to SSH 192.168.0.102, 192.168.0.102. Specify your username as pi and the password would be RASPBERRY. Okay, so I'll give you those details. So now you're logged into your Raspberry Pi. This is your Raspberry Pi also. So if you want to check your version, which version of Raspberry Pi you're using, you could enter. What is it? What is it? Hmm. Enter this cat etc. Nationals. Anyway, so this is your Raspberry Pi OS version now. We are using Raspbian Stretch, okay, and it's called Raspbian GNU Linux, and the version ID is 9, and the version is 9, which means Stretch. ID is Raspbian, ID like Debian. It is like a Debian version of Linux, and that's it. So you're using this version of Raspberry Pi now. Okay, now see basically Raspberry Pi is an recommended device or a recommended board to learn Linux environment actually. So could do anything over here. And if anything happens, I mean, when you're using a system, obviously, you might be using a computer that is worth around 20-25,000 at least when you're learning something. So for in case of a Raspberry Pi, you're hardly spending around 3 to 4 thousand, and even if something happens to your hardware, it is just 3 to 4 thousand. I mean, better than 20,000, right? And even if something happens, let's say if something happens, you could uh, try and fix it by just removing the memory card, boot up your Raspbian OS again, and then you could do things again. I mean, you could do all these things at once again. So you could experiment on your Linux in your Raspberry Pi. Okay, so apart from that, apart from that, you could enable VNC. Okay, so sudo raspi dash config. So we here you can set your Raspberry Pi. I mean, you can change your settings for your Raspberry Pi. So if I go over to advanced options, if I go over to, you can change your resolution, you can change your memory split and everything. Okay, so I'll just expand file systems. Okay. And I'll just update my Raspberry Pi. It's a bit slow because my router is a bit far from here, so since we're using VNC, it's a bit slow. I change my network, but then I'll have to change my PC's network as well. You need to make sure that both your laptop and Raspberry Pi are connected to the same network. Like if your Raspberry Pi is connected to your Wi-Fi hotspot, like your mobile phone, and your laptop is connected to your Wi-Fi, local Wi-Fi, then you won't be able to get this. Okay, so make sure your Raspberry Pi and your laptop are connected to the same network. Like my Raspberry Pi is connected to Naru, and my laptop is also connected to Naru. So both of these things are connected to Naru. Okay. Alright, so once that is done, interfacing options, I'll enable VNC. I'll enable VNC. Okay, that's it. I'll just close it, so it asks me to reboot it once, so I'll just reboot it. Okay, it will take some time. By then, I'll do one more thing. I'll install VNC viewer. Okay, for Windows. All these softwares are really small, so I'll provide a link to all these softwares, or you could directly Google it, you can download it. I mean, the versions don't matter, so which version you're using doesn't matter as long as it works. So you could use any versions of these softwares. So the basic software that you need is SD card formatter, the Billinature, and all these things. So Win32 disk image, I'll just this and I'll keep it over here. Okay, so I'll keep this over here. Second, instead of when Elena Bicha, you can use this. Okay, so instead of if Balina Isha, I mean this thing works a bit better. Um, I think this one works a bit better. So treatment desktop shortcut. Okay, so that's your okay. So this is your software. So this thing works a bit better as compared to Billinature. I mean Billinature is obviously good, but after writing out your memory card, you might have to insert it to your Raspberry Pi. Only after that you can make any changes. So it's better if you use Win32 disk images. So you'll have to select which OS you're using. So I'll select this one, Raspbian Stretch, and I'll have to select my drive. Which drive am I using? Mine was FFI, and make sure you're there's no hard disk or anything connected over here, because if any hard disk is connected, it might write this image to your hard disk. So make sure that no other devices are connected when doing this. Okay, that's it. It's taking a bit too long. Maybe the network is a bit slow. Switch over to something. Let me show you once again. Alright, alright. So that covers the basic booting up part. Let's see. Okay, I do have ENC inside the phone actually. I have to install. So do 168. So what's the IP? Uh, Okay, so now we are putting your Raspberry Pi on VNC server. So make sure your VNC is enabled, or else you won't be getting this. Make sure your VNC is enabled. Have it installed actually. Still too long. Some other issues. You have to put in the port number as well. So by default, the port number for VNC server is VNC port number from VNC 5900. Simulation as well. Start this one. So start this one. Let's start. So it's installed. Let's see your okay. Got it. Just type in your address 192.168.1.0.102. Into this. Alright. I changed my network. That's the issue. I need to change back to now because I need to make sure that both my Raspberry Pi and my computer are connected to the same network. Or else it won't do this. So that's the issue actually. So, okay. So your username is Pi. Your password is Raspberry. Okay. Your password is Raspberry. Your signature. So now we voted into your Raspberry Pi using VNC. So this is your first time vote. So when you're voting for the first time, you need to select your country. You need to put this. So just language should be English. Next. Better not change the password. That's fine. Click over here because it will try and readjust your desktop. So better just keep it as it is. Don't change anything. So it will try and update your software. So it was better if you skip it because earlier when we did a sudo apt-get update, we did the sudo apt-get update. Okay. Update is to update your basic OS versions like the system files actually. So when you do this, it won't take much time, but when you do this, it takes too much time. So that's what is being done over here. So it'll take some time. Till then, I mean, you could look into the other things. You have your Python ideally over here. So you could program in Python ideally. Like, file is equal to is so what is a plus b is okay, that is like that. So you could use all those things and have your development environment, everything over here. Um, so if you're using Raspberry Pi 4, the OS is a bit more like crispier, you could say. Thus, the image is a bit crispy, right? Over here. It's a bit blurry. So in Raspberry Pi 4, the OS is a bit more clear because it supports 4K. Now this is basic 480p, I would say. So 480p, it's a bit blurry, that's why. But still, it works and it doesn't heat up your device. Everything works for perfectly, so that is good enough, I would say. Okay, so that's it. So that basically covers your Raspberry Pi, how to boot up your Raspberry Pi. So we'll cover the basic things afterwards. Okay, alright, so we'll stop.